Now, I'd like you to literally think about just one of those moments, not a category of moments, not about what it feels like to feel good, but literally a moment in your life where you had one of these extraordinary peak experiences where it felt like you couldn't put a foot down wrong. If life could be like this, it would unfold for you perfectly. And do whatever it might need to be done so that you can have this sensation, and then notice, weird kind of question here, where in your body it is. Where is the sensation in your body that you're aware of being most alive? And I want you to get it down to as small as the most minute aspect of awareness as you can, down to a cellular level if you can. Because what I found in the work that I do is that this is literally happening as a kind of what we call skin memory in the actual muscle fibers. So we are looking for, when I'm doing work with people, micromuscular movement. Literally a twitch at the level of the surface of the skin where the muscle, as I go to move my arm, begins to fire to create the structure so that movement can occur. So this, compared to what I'm looking for, is gross movement. That's a little better. That movement, where all I did is create a little more tension in my arm, is closer to that micromuscular movement. So you want to be aware at the most minute level where that sensation is when you feel spectacular. When you know all bars hold, you are magnificent. You cannot put a foot down wrong. It comes from horse racing, by the way, where the idea is that the horse in that race could not put a foot down wrong. It just ran all out and was its most magnificent self. And now all of a sudden, you're having this experience and it's somewhere in your body. And I want you to notice what happens as that experience continues, right? And it's going to either intensify, or it's going to localize more, or it's going to spread, but something will happen if you can allow your awareness to be where the sensation of what I'm calling this kind of sensation of life being magnificent or perfect begins from. And I want you to check something for me. Could you be like this and be overwhelmed by fear? Or if you were like this, would it be possible to be in the presence of something that's threatening or stressful or fearful? Something that you could acknowledge as going, holy crap, this is something I need to be aware of and attend to. There's a real potential here for something to happen that I don't want to be happening, and still be present in a creative way. So I'm hoping, Vic, that you mean no, you couldn't be like this and be afraid. I hope that that's what you mean by that. I just see a little note down here from Vic. So if we're doing this correctly, so to speak, what happens is we now enter into, got it, Vic, we're in the excitatory. We're in this idea of what sometimes is referred to as presence, being present and being in presence, but we're doing it at a very somatic, physical level. And it's not that the fear thing doesn't exist. You know, 100 years ago, in my own history, I talked a little bit about being a street rat and a fighter and an architect. Well, between architecture and cognitive science, I spent about 4 years training dogs. And I worked with this guy, Bob Brandow, who's absolutely insane and brilliant simultaneously. And he has the most magnificent, what we call phrasing in the world of dog training. It means he moves around the animals in such a way that they naturally resonate and move with him. It's unbelievable, his ability to integrate with these animals. And I learned from him. I kind of spent 4 years apprenticing with him. I have a thing about apprenticing with geniuses. And so working around Bob, one of the things I noticed and learned was that these signals being sent somatically are impossible to avoid or ignore. And the dogs that we were training were dogs that were being trained for high-level protection work at kind of sophisticated employment. So we were placing them with families that really needed protection dogs, that were really essentially at risk. And these dogs were designed to protect their homes. And at the same time, while they could protect them and do real damage if they needed to, hang around with their 2-year-old children or their infants and be totally secure, no danger. So these dogs were able to regulate that aggression and that affection absolutely under the circumstances. And what I did a lot in those days is I was learning to do what we call agitation. Agitation means getting the dog to be aggressive. So you do things to look like a criminal, or whatever. Not actually that, but you get the idea. What I did is I was coming in on these dogs and very aggressively being intense with them so that they would, what we call light up or fire up or get all charged up, and they would want to be aggressive towards what I was demonstrating. And I can tell you, the dogs we were working with were mostly, by the way, pit bulls. About 90% of the dogs we worked with were pit bulls. And when a pit bull bites you, even with a sleeve on, and the only sleeves you wore were small leather sleeves, it hurts like heck. And it puts you on your toes. And even with the sleeve on, it was not pleasant, and I was a bit afraid. The other problem was, because we were only wearing a little leather sleeve, I had to make sure the dog bit the sleeve and not me. And I knew if it bit me, I'd be in real trouble. So the fear that was present there was not, there was no need to make it believe with it. There was no false fear. It was real, absolute fear. And believe me, the dogs understood the guy who's coming in doesn't want to get bit. They could feel it coming off me in waves. I'm sure I stunk of fear. And it was probably enough that even humans would have been able to smell the fear coming off me at that moment. But I did it anyway because that was part of the process of training these dogs. And I was learning how to do it, and I was getting good at it. And in fact, I have a few stitches I could point to that are there from those learning days, right? In any case, what I'm getting to here is that that fear is real. And yet, as I learned more, as I became more comfortable with that fear being present, I had more choices. I could respond more creatively. I could do more with the dogs and with the person who was handling the dog so that we could increase their skill, the dog's skill, in recognizing the distinction between threat and non-threat. And eventually I got to the point where I could do things like have the dog run at me off leash and bite me from 20, 30, 50 yards away and deal with what was happening, which was a compression of all that fear into a microsecond or two of time, where I had to make the decision about where exactly to place my arm so that I would remain injury-free. And I'm here and the arms are still working. And in fact, there are no scars on them. So obviously I'd figured it out at some point. And this is what I'm talking about. That moment where you know absolutely that you're able to act creatively even in the face of fear and recognize the fear that's there and the potential risk or threat that comes with it. So I'm just going to ask a question. We just check with people. Does this make sense to you, what I'm saying? That there's a way we can access ourselves where we actually have this moment of magnificence. And in that moment of magnificence, there's a way that we are. And that way that we are is somatically grounded. It's literally present in our bodies. And if we allow that to lead how we're allowing our thought process to emerge, we have choices, options, and creativity that's not available otherwise. Yeah, Rosanna, I'm not saying it's easy. I'm just asking if it makes sense it's possible, right? And what I'm going to add here, and this is the critical part about this part of the conversation that I want to have with you, the time to practice this is not when the dog is running at you to eat you. It's when you're calm and you're cool and you're in a totally controlled environment and you don't need to practice not being afraid because you're not. You want to access this state of being, this highly potent, magnificent state, when you have the ability to put all of your attention there because there isn't anything threatening or fearful or stressful happening beyond the ordinary. Life itself may be frightening, threatening, stressful, but beyond the ordinary. And you're going to learn to attune to this sensation of magnificence or perfection or exquisiteness or the excitatory state, however you want to reference it. And if you'll do this and you'll condition the nervous system, the neural system, and the processes of the neural system, and a lot of this has to do with what we call vagal response. If you'll condition this in a setting that you have control over, you'll have access to it when you need it and you're not in control, where the world is showing up in a way where you just are pleased that you spent the 3 times a day for 3 weeks running this process. So your body became so familiar with it that it became the default pattern. And that's largely what I do when I'm working with clients. That's largely what I do when they come into my programs and they train with me. It's largely what I do when I go into companies and corporations and work with the leaders, is I teach them how to access this position of magnificence. And it's not just the process to slow the breath down. You know, Hallie Harrison said something. I'm not sure what you're saying there. I'm not sure if what you said is what I said, but it's not just the process of slowing the breath down. This is a full body, toes to nose experience of a somatic position that literally becomes present in you when you are at a magnificent posture, when you are what we could call your best self, when you're accessing this position of massive creativity and the excitatory. I would say that this is something that I see happening for people in programs that we run instantaneously. When they get it, they just get it. It's just present. And the question becomes, all I have to do, Joseph, is this? And I go, yeah. Fundamentally, all you have to do is this, but you have to condition it so it's available to you when it's normally not. You see, it's available to you when your child's being born. It's available to you when you're having that great day with a friend of yours and you're sitting back and laying back because you're explaining how great the day went for you over a beer. It's there for you after you make the best goal of your life in a game that you're engaged in. It's there for you in those moments. I get that. It's not there for you when you're under threat. It's not there for you when the boss is giving you a bunch of garbage about what's going on, or you're the boss and there's a bunch of garbage coming at you and you have to deal with it in an ongoing way, or it's been a bad day for your kid or your spouse or your lover. Then it's not so easy to access these moments. So that's why you have to practice it when you're not in those moments, when you're in the moments of comfort and ease, and you can manifest it. And yes, breathing helps. But it's not the only thing you need to know. You need to know all of these little subtle micro movements. Now, eventually, what will happen if you practice this, you're going to notice something really unique and powerful coming up. And it's going to be that there's a kind of movement that your body will want to engage. Now, it might be a gross movement like the one I'm demonstrating to make it obvious to you, frankly. And I find myself like wanting to do things. I want to kind of reach out into the world when I do this. And I'll say this when I'm speaking. I'm in front of a group of people and I go, listen, there's something I want you to know. And there's this kind of gesture I make. And that gesture is a signal to me through my body. I'm okay. I got this. I'm in control. Right? For other people, there might be other things they do. They might do something like this, or they might do something really subtle, or even subtler. But there's a signal that your body will generate, right? And if we watch in athletics, this is really interesting to watch. We watch, guys organizing their bodies to be ready. And when I use the word guys, I mean of any genitalia, right? It's not necessarily a male comment. So what's happening is that I watch people organize themselves to be magnificent. And I watch this in sports, especially just because it's so obvious there. I remember years ago when I was a kid, because I'm an old man now, and a guy named John McEnroe was playing tennis. And he would go out onto the court and he would bounce the ball twice and he would catch it. He'd bounce it again, he'd catch it, and then he'd serve. It was almost like a routine that he installed in himself that reset him, regardless of what had happened the moment before. What had happened to the point before was irrelevant. He was now in that moment to reset. I've worked with some golfers, and golfers are really unique creatures when it comes to needing to reset after the shot they just took. And the great ones know exactly how to do it, and they normally have a routine. I said I was a competitive boxer, so I've watched a lot of boxers. You'll watch them do stuff like this. They go out and they're shaking their head, and they're doing something. They're not just doing this to loosen the muscles. They're doing this because it organizes themselves. They know that feeling just before going in the ring and what it's like to organize themselves, and then they turn on, and they're there. And you can watch them. There's almost like this steely, absolute presence of certainty when a boxer is able to sustain that internal position and they're looking at their opponent. There's other times where you can see the false confidence they have, where they're manifesting confidence, and it's a completely different thing. But there's something that your body will allow you to recognize that comes through when you can access these positions and allow yourself to become aware of what that thing is that you're noticing. This is the embodiment piece, is that your body is signaling your mind, your brain, so that you can do these things. And I said this is linked into this thing we call the vagal response, the system of the vagus nerve that links the enteric neural system in the abdomen, the intestines, the stomach, the gut, with the neural system that's cranial in your head, in your skull. And the vagus nerve is a really interesting thing, because when we look at the signal sets coming through the vagus nerve, what we find is that the vast majority of them, up to 90% of the signaling through the vagus nerve, is from the enteric to the cortical, to the cranial system, not the other way around. What does that tell us? That tells us that the enteric system leads. If the system signals are from the enteric to the cranial, It means that the enteric is leading the cranial system, at least with regard to vagal response. There are neuroscientists who are out there right now who believe it's very, very possible that what's going on is that the cranial system was evolved in service to the enteric system, not the other way around. That our primary neural system is the enteric system. And what I want you to have a little bit of experience as we close out, as we get closer to finishing up, is that vagal response is connected to breathing, heart rate, blood pressure, all of these things that we look at when we're looking at the sympathetic and parasympathetic. Remember, in the sympathetic, you have fight, flight, freeze, and the system eventually closes down when it's overwhelmed. In the other system, the parasympathetic, the system opens. And as the system opens, things become available as simple as digestion and orgasm. So if you want an orgasm, this is really, really good stuff to learn. Okay, just a little side note there. And one of the things you can do is you can allow the enteric system to operate, because I want you to just do one thing with me. It'll take me about 2 minutes to do this, so we should have enough time. I want you to notice whatever you're noticing right now that starts at the top of your head, and how literally you feel in your body, and then working through, almost like a CAT scan, taking layers through your body, where you have contraction and where you have relaxation in the body, where there's any residual tension in the musculature. And allow yourself just to notice it. I'm not asking you to change it. Stop with this idea you should be changing shit. That's not what this is about. It's simply noticing how you're organized in this moment. And slice bit by bit through the noticing process of how you are all the way down through your body, and especially at the point where you cross from the upper thoracic region, the upper body, your torso, into the hips, right? So you want to notice this transition point, because that's a major point, especially if you're sitting, the way that you're operating your body and the level of contraction and relaxation in various muscles, side, front, back, through your system, all the way down through your hips, your legs, again, through the major joint of the knee, into the calf muscles and the ankles, and all the way down to your feet. Just notice how they feel. And now do the same thing in reverse order, starting with your toes. Literally, just begin to come up and notice where you have relaxations and contractions. And allow yourself to notice, if you notice those same things, those same places of relaxation and contraction in both directions, down and up. And just by noticing them, you may also notice that they begin to change. And now I want you to do it one more time, but this time I want you to do it in a little funkier way and faster. I want you to notice on just the right side of your body, so kind of split your body, where the contractions are and where the relaxations are. And as soon as you notice anywhere where there's a contraction or a relaxation that's noticeable, just check the opposite side of the body and notice if it's the same on that side of the body as well. Just notice. Do it quickly. And then when you get down all the way to your toes, go all the way back up, but this time start by noticing on the left side of your body, the left side. And again, where you notice any significant contraction or relaxation, just notice if it's equal. Notice if it's equal on the other side of your body. And then get all the way up to the top of your head again. Last part of the exercise. Just go down one more time and equalize left and right sides. So wherever there's any contraction, just relax it to the point where it's as relaxed as the opposite side of your body. So the right side is now leading the left side where there's relaxations. When you get down to the bottom, come back up again, letting the left side lead the right side. So you're having an equal number of experiences, left and right side of your body. Now, at some point, you may notice as you're doing this that you want to breathe more deeply. You may want to stretch. You may want to yawn. There's a number of things that can happen, but what's happening is you're beginning to normalize the system in the physical space that you're occupying. But I mostly want you to notice, as we're finishing up this particular exercise, has it changed at all the way that you're thinking about being here with me. Because regardless of the fact that we're separated by this virtual experience, you're here with me, I'm here with you. I'm experiencing you as we share this space. I can't help it. I don't think I'm talking to a camera with nobody behind it. I think I'm talking to a camera with a whole bunch of people behind it. I think I'm talking to you. And so that changes the way I experience myself being present in this moment. And I'm wondering if in any way this little exercise, this final little bit that I'm offering you, has begun to change how you're thinking about being in the space. So this is just some of the things that we can talk about and how you might manifest access in this space where fear can take over. And the thing that I want you to get, as I said at the very beginning, is that we live in a space that's saturated with messages of fear, or messages designed to provoke fear. Literally, I believe with absolute conviction that we live in a space that's designed to keep us on edge and to keep us afraid, to keep us separate and fragmented, to separate us from our natural state of magnificence. Because in that state, we're fucking dangerous. That's the problem. When we're in our natural state of magnificence, we can be creative, we can think, we can make decisions for ourselves. It's hard to lead us around. And all of a sudden, of its own accord, the ring that was through our nose falls out to the ground, shattering the silence of control. And we begin to have a life that we're destined to lead if we can simply come to know what it is to be ourselves. And that's the essence of the work that I do, whether I'm doing it with any individual on the planet or leaders who are responsible for guiding others to the potentiality that they can only manifest when they're present to one another and can never manifest by themselves alone.